I sure hope someone picks up that phone. 'Cause let's just say I called it. What's up, guys? All Hunter here, and here we are to do a breakdown and review of chapter 418 of My Hero Academia, which is known as A Small Heart. And, yeah, I called it. But, like, this is one of the many times in life where I wish I didn't call it. But, here's the thing. You're gonna hear me whine. You're gonna hear me complain a little bit. But this chapter does have elements that I like on a visual level, has elements I like on a character level, has their elements I like on a thematic level that feeds back into the video. There are things I like in this chapter. But you're gonna hear me whine. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? It's that guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. Tenko Shimura. It's interesting that Midoriya doesn't actually know Shigaraki's real name. Like, I don't know. I always found that funny. Of course, it makes sense why he wouldn't. Like, why would he? I don't even think Nana knows her kid's real name. Being completely honest with him. And I don't think anyone said it in the memory. But I guess you could assume. Like, Midoriya, I just find it funny because Midoriya ends up calling him Shigaraki chapter, or at least going to. But with that being the case, let's actually hop into the chapter itself and not do any more yapping. Well, we have more yapping to do, but not in this beginning section. So we open up and we do get to see that what Deku found there was but a crying child. The same crying child he heard so long ago. And of course, if you remember the first war, this is in particular the moment, the instance, the image, the memory that Midoriya specifically connects with, and what he rationalizes to the other One For All users that he ultimately needs to save. At the risk of everything else, he needs to save the crying child that he saw within that dream. Quirk world. The crying kid he saw in the Quirk world. He needed to save that child. He finally reached the core of it. He reached the core of Shigaraki's being after this deep mix of spiritual, quirk, mental, psychological journey, and he's finally here. Notably, he does not reach his state of equivalence to Shigaraki just yet, but he is close, as we see by his middle school attire. However, we see that Midoriya says, "It's the same thing I felt back in Gunga." Once again, if you forgot about it, this is the moment where Midoriya felt that connection to Shigaraki. Honestly, with how much Horror uses flashback panels, I'm shocked he didn't use this dead space here to just show at least a little image of what he's referencing. Because, like, I know what he's referencing. Because I don't like it. And thusly, it's stuck in my memory. But, like, I don't know where Gunga is. But maybe, because Gunga is a place in Japan, I do believe. So maybe more people would know and, like, be able to associate it properly. I don't know. But with that being the case, we see Midoriya begins to rush forward. And he goes, "Shig!" Because, remember, I think maybe he heard Shimura or Tenko like once or twice, so he needs to still connect to Shigaraki in this external way. And I actually do like it. Notably, I clowned it a second ago. But once again, like I said, there are things in the chapter that I like. I like that Midoriya essentially needs to reach for Shigaraki while knowing nothing about him. Like, notably, even this little memory rendezvous he's been having with Shigaraki the past couple chapters has really been super duper unclear and kind of taught Midoriya very little, if anything, about Shigaraki. He just knows there's something unhealthy in the home, and the home is what makes Shigaraki angry. That's about it. He doesn't really have any further context for that, but I actually like that. Because once again, it shows the true hero nature of Midoriya, right? It doesn't matter that he doesn't know who you are. It doesn't matter if you've been a terrible person. It doesn't matter if you were always destined to be a terrible person, and or you consciously chose to be a terrible person. As long as he can find it, as long as he can find that spark of humanity in you, if he can find that crying child, he's going to do his best to save it. And once again, I'll mention it later, this does bring up an interesting question, and it's going to interest me in how Midoriya ends up tackling a certain somebody who shows up later. But with it being the case, we see Midoriya run towards Shigaraki, but of course, he's within the world of a dream. And thusly, he realizes this dreamy world he's in contains the origin point, the nexus point, the start of decay. It's a birth, essentially. As Shigaraki, if you don't remember, puts his hands on Mon and then absolutely decays and disintegrates Mon. Rough? And I'm not talking about the dog's bark, like just genuinely rough. I don't own a corgi, but I feel I can hear them. Every single corgi owner in the world who reads My Hero Academia screaming in agony, just like I heard them screaming like 4 years ago now. But with that being the case, we see that Shigaraki, once again, is bamboozled. That's the thing about this whole memory sequence. The ability of our characters to interfere and intervene kind of varies depending on the moment. I think playing this moment out is important because, once again, Midoriya is still trying to learn more about Shigaraki before he attempts to reach that handout. And we see Shigaraki ask, Mon-chan? And we see Midoriya realizes what we realized, once again, about 4 years ago at this point. That's the first time he activated Decay. And of course, we see Shigaraki's sister come out being like, Tenko, so I know that Dad beat the brakes off you, but dinner's... Oh my god! I'm sorry, I should have played it like that. But we see Midoriya realize, no way, so that's how it is? What's about to happen is his true core, the original point. Notably, this does make sense to be the original point of Shigaraki, right? Because not only is it his quirk awakening, and quirks, as consistently mentioned in MHA, shape the person just as much as the person shapes the quirk and how it's viewed and utilized, but also because this is the origin point of all those endless hands that will come to adorn Shigaraki's body. Of course, the whole point of Shigaraki's journey as a character was to abandon those hands and no longer be bound by them. But like I said, I'm leaning towards it, especially at the end of this chapter. And I know people, I've seen it in the comments, and I do want to go back and respond to some comments. And I do want to make a proper discussion video about it, especially now that I was right, in a way. I don't know, maybe I'm reading into things too much, and that's typically what I do. Welcome to That Guy with the Pencil. But I feel like the journey of Shigaraki got changed. I don't, like, once again, as fun as I am with this introspective journey, even if I do think there should be some more of it, like, you know, specifically pertaining to Midoriya himself, but that's another thing for another time. I do think that this is fine in of itself. In fact, I do like aspects of it very, very much. I do like the interpersonal connection, but my issue with it is that it really, really just strips away everything that Shigaraki Tomura grew into. Which is fine in the sense that, like, we weren't ever supposed to see Shigaraki as someone to look up to or compare to, or anything like that. He's meant to be wrong, a monster, an animal, a beast, a creature. But one of the main reasons that Shigaraki was one of my favorite characters is because of his development as a villain, growing up from this literal man-child into the monster he was. But as you'll see, this chapter is breaking away all that. It's changing, well, not this chapter, just this past sequence has been breaking all that down. Shigaraki Tomura is not a man. He's a mask. And that's fine. He was built to be a mask. As we'll find by the end of the chapter, as a certain someone says, you never made a single choice on your own. Shigaraki Tomura was never a real person. He was never meant to be a person. He was meant to be a hollow husk to be possessed and used. I don't like that, though. I really don't. I really wish Hori did not. And here's the thing. It's hard to argue it as backpedaling, because in ways it makes sense with how quirks are established, even by the time of First War. But let me stop talking. Let me get through the chapter so I can actually start talking about the things I don't like. But with it being the case, we see the sister freak out. We see Shigaraki reach out, going to grab and destroy her. But this is one of the major things I like about the chapter, which you can peep in the live reaction, the 50-minute live reaction over on the Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or you can remember for as little as $3 a month, the people right here on the main channel. But with it being the case, we see Shigaraki be caught, intercepted, and his sister saved by Midoriya. But not just any Midoriya, very particularly the youngest Midoriya. Not Baby Doria, but I don't think we ever saw Baby Doria. This is the youngest Doria we've seen ever in the narrative, and this is the one to meet directly with Shigaraki. Once again, we've been building to this. Slowly but surely, Midoriya's been regressing further and further and further into his more childlike aspect. Like I said in the opener, we were at his middle school self. This is the other most recent canon variation of him that we see, that is the youngest, so it makes sense that this is the one that meets him, and also it plays into, once again, a visual and thematic theme that Shigaraki and Midoriya had for the longest time, the idea that they were both equals walking down opposing paths. And it's another thing that I do think gets sacrificed by All For One, being All For One, and All For One-ing everywhere, and All For One-ing is meat all over the narrative, but one of the biggest reasons why you will still hear people, to this day, glaze, and for good reason, because heck, I am glazed too, for a little bit, the contrasting dynamics of Midoriya and Shigaraki is because My Hero Academia was a mirror narrative. It was Midoriya growing into the greatest hero of all time, and Shigaraki growing into the greatest villain of all time. And what was working up until the end of First War, where All For One came back and decided he was going to take over the narrative and be our real main villain. Oh, he's going to be our real main villain, all right. it felt like the paths that they were walking diverged. Shigaraki stopgapped, and if anything started to regress, as Midoriya kept moving forward into his true heroism, which made the dynamic fall apart. It made Shigaraki fall apart as a character. There's a reason, you know what, I can't say no one, because I need to do a proper, comprehensive discussion, and I need to do an analysis, and I want to talk about it with other people, especially, about how we feel about Shigaraki being taken over by All For One and not being a character for 2 to 3 years. But when that happened, when he got sealed away, Midoriya kept progressing, already shattering the dynamic. But at least by regressing, going further back into the timeline, we essentially do get to have our cake and eat it too, where it is Kid Midoriya, who greatly remembers and resembles Kid Shigaraki, being the one to intervene. Because remember, the nexus point of both of their lives, and the core of who they are, were established when they were both young. Midoriya's desire to save everyone and be the ultimate hero was born was born when he was a young child and was truly inspired by All Might. Tenko Shimura wanted to be a hero and was also inspired by All Might, both of their cores and who they are to this day, and what traces back everything to is this childhood age, so both of them clashing, quote-unquote, in their child forms makes sense on a thematic level, on a dynamic parallel level, and on a visual level, makes for an interesting enough visual. Like, obviously, it would be a bit weird if it was even middle school Midoriya just, I don't know, grabbing Kid Rocky by the neck and being like, don't disintegrate your sister. Like, obviously, this kind of dualistic clashing makes sense. It works on every single level, which I do, once again, really like in the context of the narrative we set up to this point. Do I like what it means on like a general thematic level? No, on a general thematic level, it still is the parallels between these two. But on like a character level, once again, I liked it more when Midoriya and Shigaraki were rivaling opposites, rivaling equals. But Midoriya has essentially taken the role as the superior and the savior of Tomura or Shimura, and I'm just not the biggest fan of it. But once again, we'll get into that further later. As we see, then Midoriya realizes, I have to put an end to this. We're in a world of memories. I have to keep visualizing, keep holding on to him while remembering my hands being there. So this is an interesting way. Once again, the line between how much tangible impact these characters have in this world, how real it is versus how not real it is very vague, because Hori likes to keep it very vague because that allows Hori to do whatever he wants. So ultimately, I think Shigaraki is actually affecting Midoriya with decay, as his sister would be, considering the conditions for decay's activation are being met. But essentially, since it actually isn't real, it's not actually happening, despite this being one of Shigaraki's strongest variations of decay, Midoriya is able to essentially like pseudo-regenerate his arms, because he's not actually really there, nor is his real body really there. He's not actually a kid here. So he's fighting against reality, essentially, in this arm struggle with Shigaraki, which, once again, is neat on a thematic level. And we see that Tenko begins asking, why? Why? And we see that Midoriya realizes, and does lay out barely, especially considering we're probably not going to see any of them except for maybe the All Might vestige, but even then I think the All Might vestige is cooked too. We're likely not seeing any of the One For All vestiges anymore, unless they come back to deal with the guy who appears at the end of the chapter in some way, shape, or form. It's like a whole old generation versus new generation thing, freedom, yada yada yada. I can't say, me of all people cannot say yada yada yada, but like, if it's an old generation versus new generation thing that gets brought up again by bringing back the previous users, then I can expect to see them. But I do like that Midoriya acknowledges, even if they weren't real people, even if they were quirks, even if they were garnishes to the power that is One For All, and thusly perished however long ago they perished, some many years ago, some recently, I do like that Midoriya fully acknowledges, I'm only here because One For All got me here. I wouldn't have been able to make it without them, so I cannot let this opportunity slip away. Good stuff. And we see, and Midoriya does break, but he keeps reforming as he says, I'll have to use my own body because you're crying. So, once again, we're going back into the idea of Midoriya disregarding everything else for the crying child. Which, in the context of how the narrative has been established and the establishment of Shigaraki being a mask and not a real person, makes sense. Once again, I've gone over this before, so I'll say it nice and sweet, short here. I think Shigaraki not being a real character and just being a mask born to protect the soft core that is the crying child, dumb. I don't like it. It's not wrong. I just don't like it. That's one of the biggest things I have to clarify. I cannot say this is objectively wrong, nor not even objectively hinted at. I just think it wastes years of character development, entire arcs worth of character development, entire arcs worth of character dynamics. And I think even Hori feels that way based on what he hints at later in this very same chapter. But once again, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Once again, I don't know what Hori does when writing. Like, notably, in a series that I'm writing, it's going to be 15 books, which is a lot, and so it's taken me forever to write it. But what I've done is I've written out a skeletal structure. Each one of the books. I know the major plots, the major themes, the major character interactions I want to have, and the major progressions that are going to happen at each one of these individual books. I have all that written out in a Google Doc, and essentially what I'm working on now is fleshing all of it out. Actually writing the books, putting my thoughts to paper. I'm not sure if Hori did that. Because once again, and I'll address this properly in its own dedicated video, I feel like this twist for Shigaraki was not planned. It doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't. But at the same time, it does feel like it's planned, because I'm not exactly sure what Midoriya's ultimate end conclusion was going to be if Shigaraki was a real person. If Midoriya dove all the way in here and found out the crying child was crying out of hatred, malice, and anger that grew into the man that Midoriya knew today. But we see, once again, like I mentioned, Hori may be flipping back and forth himself. Tenko says, "No, I chose to do that! Tenko's feelings are coming straight at me. I destroyed my house and my family of my own volition. Otherwise, why would I even have these hands? Who would be able to explain why I was born this way?" And that is, once again, an interesting aspect of My Hero Academia that consistently gets tackled. Does the man make the quirk, or does the quirk make the man? Are you who you are based on your biological factors, or do your biological factors determine who you are? Of course, a person who was born tall is going to feel differently from a person who was born short. Society will treat them both differently. What the ramifications of that mean are also vary society by society, but a tall person may find more success or more ease in certain aspects in the same way that a short person may find more success and ease in some aspects. And it even varies across multiple different spectrums. So I can understand why Shigaraki views himself this way. He's like, dude, this is me. There is, and once again, it's kind of, at least to me, this is the mask speaking through the core, which I know sounds so weird and so stupid, but hear me out. This is the mask of Shigaraki speaking through the core, essentially trying to justify its existence, right? Because if it agrees with Midoriya, if it fully gives into the fact that, no, in fact, I'm not real, there is no reason for me to be this way, I'm just a sad kid who decided to lash out at the entire world, none of this emotion was justified, and thus I should just stop, then essentially it's the mask that was Shigaraki Tomura being like, I don't exist really, I'm not relevant. And that is born on the basis of the quirk. Once again, the inorganic but organic nature of who Shigaraki is, and it tackles that whole dynamic. But we'll see later that ultimately this may have not ever been the case, because we see that Midoriya realizes this is his most delicate and weak spot. He's repelling me, but I can't let go. A strong hatred and a strong sense of catharsis, balanced against sorrow and perplexity. Right now, Tenko is still wavering. Oh, so wait, he does know he's Tenko. Wait a minute. Should we take back that complaint a minute earlier? I wonder why he calls him Shigaraki then. Well, then maybe, but no, he knows his name is Shimura. I wonder why he went Shig, as if he was going to say Shigaraki. But let's see. We see that once again, Shigaraki's trying to fight back. He's trying to maintain himself. And once again, I say this is Shigaraki because we see what Tenko. Once again, I hate to divest the two characters, but Hori's laid out that these are two separate characters in a way. Get your hands off me! Maybe there's no other way besides slaughter. And I don't know what I'm going to do when the time comes. So we're essentially going to the idea, back to the core of what Shigaraki or what Tenko Shimura was looking for. Looking for a hand to reach out. Looking for a hero to save him. Looking for the world to acknowledge him. And remember, if you do, when Shigaraki was first walking out, no one extended his hands to him. And thusly, he built up this wall of hatred. That's why I still think this "get your hands off me" is the mask still fighting back. It's Shigaraki, not Shimura or Tenko. Because, remember what he was looking for. He was looking for that hand, and he took the first one that extended it. And that's where Shigaraki was born. But Tenko would not do this. In fact, he would want to be connected with. So Shigaraki's still fighting back. And this is, once again, Midoriya fighting through the wall, that fake bridge that is Shigaraki, to reach the boy, the core, Tenko Shimura. And we see this is the callback to that when he's talking to the other vestiges in All for One, or One for All. Maybe there's no other way besides slaughter, and I don't know what I'm gonna do when the time comes. But I felt the hatred's flow. It's too strong. I'll be shattered into pieces. But we see him fight back. And he brings back an interesting connection. Way back to the Vigilante arc. I felt at ease when someone held my hand. And ultimately, through that connection, that's why I'm here. And you see in this instance, the mask. What was the decay and what was the person that we knew of Shigaraki Tomura effectively begin to die, shatter and break away. And we see Midoriya armless lock heads with the Shigaraki, truly binding the two down to their memory and allowing them to see into a hypothetical alternate world. But one thing I do like about this, once again, I want to praise before I go anti-glaze. I do like the visual symbolism here. I do like the fact that Midoriya did have to sacrifice his body. He did have to take the risk. He did have to put everything on the line in order to break through and possibly reach the core of Shigaraki and begin to connect with him properly. That's displayed very, very well here. Once again, it's kind of like how in Uraraka's fight with Toga, despite Toga being portrayed as this massive, huge monster, Kid Uraraka still reached out her hand, was still willing to reach out through the wall, through the mask, through the danger. Once again, proving why those two characters in particular are true heroes in ways that a lot of the characters wouldn't be. Of course, is it wise? I still don't think so. But regardless, that's the point. It is unwise. It is the harder path. It is the dangerous path. It's the path that's going to come at self-sacrifice. And the way that Hori displays that here visually, with both Midoriya and Shigaraki fading away, but very specifically Midoriya having lost his arms, and the pieces of him simply blowing into the wind. Good stuff. Good stuff. I like it. And we see, once again, this alternate hypothetical world. Of course, timeline-wise, this couldn't make sense, because Shigaraki and, Midoriya, they were not the same age. But with it being, well, here's the thing. The kids say, Meikun, Tomo-chan. Tomo-chan likely means Tomura, and Mikun, I mean, unless they go with the ma, but Tenko Shimura does not have me. I assume Mikun is meant to mean Midoriya. But, once again, this is a possible dream. A reality that Midoriya is trying to open the door to for Shigaraki, if only symbolically. As we see, they say, you should be All Might, Tenchan! Because remember, way back when, Tenko Shimura's original goal was to be a hero, just like All Might. And we see him smile, then the smile weakens, then he looks at the clock, and he realizes that it's way too late for that. Ultimately, no. He can't accept that reality. As he says, no. I'm a villain. I'm evil. And I destroy things. Once again, the mask itself started to break away. Midoriya started to get through to it, but ultimately the mask is solidly built. And it even begins to reform itself, as we see here, with all the League of Villains. Once again, I do think it's unfortunate Shigaraki was never given time to address his feelings towards these characters, especially the loss of Twice, a hypothetical interaction with Toga post that, the monsterization of Spinner, Dabi, once again just being Dabi, and then Compress, but still, it's too late for that now. We see Shigaraki say, even if all my hatred went away, and I turned into an empty shell, I'd still need to become a hero to those guys, the villains. Once again, I do like this. I like that Shigaraki, after his long, intensive journey, the man that we spent all this time developing, did develop his own actualization, born of the beliefs he had when he was younger. After being twisted, being flipped, finding out that he's this vehicle and means for mass destruction, after all of his journeys, connecting to his friends, to his people, overturning other villain groups, evolving as an individual, all of that allowed Shigaraki to recontextualize his goal as not just being the ultimate villain, but a hero for the villains, being the symbol, this tool, this for those who cry out in agony, cry out in pain, are looking for that loss, for those who are abandoned by society, left behind, want to lash out but can't, lack the power to. The fact that Shigaraki finds himself as the embodiment for all that is interesting, and I like that. It's wonderful. Once again, it turns Shigaraki back into his own character, back into a man that's not just a baby boy who needs to be saved. No, he's a person who's developed his own belief system and his own interpretation of himself over this entire time period. Tenko Shimura grew into Shigaraki Tomura. They are one cohesive character. Midoriya can't just come in and save Tenko and suddenly Shigaraki will fall away and perish. That's wonderful. That's what I like. And that's what I appreciate. My toes are low-key curling right now. We even see these people who are rejected, who are left behind, telling him, do it. Destroy the entire world. Wipe it all out. Tomura Shigaraki. And they're all nuts. And they're all wrong. Once again, let me say this verbatim. I like Shigaraki as a character. I do not think Shigaraki should succeed. And I think Shigaraki should... I think he should get got. Completely. For all the actions he's done, for all the harm he's done, anything. His existence is a liability. I'll be real. I'm sorry. And then that's going to sound awful, but I gotta be utilitarian here. I think he should get got. Naturally. He's destruction incarnate. And he holds these ideals. And they should be respected, acknowledged, and the world should be altered so they can never produce another Shigaraki. But that's after work. In the present, he should be destroyed. But, once again, unfortunately, that's not how this story's going to go. Because we see that as the fingers fall away, as the defenses break down, an officer asks, "The fingers are vanishing! What happened in there?" And then we start to see another vision of another life, another past, another world. "Hey, Shimura-san! Oh, you're that guy from Koga Constructions. What's happening? What's going on? Right? What's transpiring? Isn't that Shigaraki's father? Interesting. A little bit strange. Why would we suddenly be seeing him? Who else is here with us right now? In physical vestige spirit world form. Whose memories could we possibly be seeing? I don't know. But we see that even Shigaraki's a bit confused. And so is Midoriya. As they review this little conversation. Suffering from lower back pain? What? Yeah, it's getting worse with each passing year. Want me to introduce you to a great doctor? Oh, no thanks. It's not that big of a deal. And we see that unfortunately, he likely did meet that doctor. He likely did go to that place. He likely did be baited, controlled. And ultimately Shigaraki was nothing but someone who was baited and controlled. As we see, the eldest Shimura is wondering, what's up with this memory? Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. What about his quirk? It hasn't manifested yet. I have no idea what this is. It's not Tenko's. Who is this guy? None other than All For One himself has returned to consume the shattering and shaking Shigaraki, who's had his foundations challenged. This memory was All For One's, because All For One never truly left. All For One has to be our big bad final villain. Allow me to hit it.
Oh, you foolish vessel. This nobody of a boy made you.
Okay, let me not do good. I can't speak that deep. Oh, you foolish vessel. This nobody of a boy made you have a change of heart. You want to become stronger without ever getting rid of your weakness. What a fool, Tenko Shimura. To this day, you've never made a single decision on your own. All For One rises. What are Shigaraki and Deku going to do? Like I said at the start of this review, I sure hope somebody picked up that phone, because I called it. I knew it. I knew he didn't have the nerve, but okay. Well, let's have a little bit of a chat. Once again, I'm going to make a full dedicated video about this. I can talk about it more in depth without the strengths of the review. But All For One's back. once again, this does not contradict anything, logistically. In fact, it makes perfect sense. This has been set up for a while now, in multiple instances. Number one, remember when Shigaraki first took back control? It was because All For One was experiencing mental weakness inside of his body, and thus Shigaraki got control. The only way that Shigaraki was going to be able to maintain control over his own body from the All For One vestige taking it over was if he stayed stable. He clearly was destabilized by the actions of Izuku Midoriya, so regardless of whatever he feels or his hypothetical interpretation of himself, doesn't matter. His weakness slipped up, and showed itself, and All For One took the body back. Makes sense. Also, this was hinted at as recently as All For One's original body's proper demise against Bakugo, where he knows that the original vestige did have the likelihood of immediately spawning in and taking it over. Once again, All For One was going to charge that up to the game and try and take it over himself, or at least help his other self, but the other self was always there. So I'm fine with All For One coming back. This isn't necessarily nonsense or bad writing or anything. It's well set up. What I don't like, though, is that it once again erases the complex character, denies the complex character, destroys the complex character of Shigaraki Tomura just to boil it down to All For One is the root of all evil. We need to destroy him in order to save everybody, including Shigaraki. I don't like it. I'll be real. A lot of people theorize this part. I never called this part, and I'll readily admit this. I never called the idea that Shigaraki got decay from All For One. And while this isn't hard confirmation that's what transpired, it is basically hard confirmation. Clearly, this is meant to be All For One's memories. What the funny thing is, though, this does imply that All For One met Shimoda directly, and then they ended up talking about it. But this does essentially hard confirm that All For One, probably using a shapeshifting quirk or something of the sort, infiltrated Shigaraki's life and set him up to have decay and set him on the path of the destruction. Yada, 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 yada. That's fine. But once again, in the same way that I don't mind that All Might gave Midoriya One For All and allowed that to facilitate Midoriya's growth and discussion into his own individual and his own man and his own character, I kind of wish All For One just played that role for Shigaraki. I don't like boiling down the complexities of My Hero Academia and its world and how its quirks interact, how the quirks interact with the characters, and how these characters have developed into their own individual, their own views of themselves as people, as heroes, as villains. I don't like that we're boiling all of that down to All For One's just evil. And he's responsible for everything, and thusly we can't deal anything. And the one true bad guy Midoriya gets to punch to death is All For One, because he's just evil. And he's pure evil. We're never going to get any introspection. Here's the thing, and it's something I meant to mention before All For One got, and I'm interested to see how he tackles it now. What does Midoriya think about All For One? What if Midoriya sees a crying child in All For One? Is he going to try to save him too? Is All For One not worth saving? Just like everybody else is, Midoriya? Oh, is it because he's pure evil? And you can team up with Shigaraki and have this big bad final battle against All For One, the real villain? If I had to assume, once again, I've been wrong before about MHA and I'm ready to be wrong again. But I think this is dumb. I don't like it. It was set up. It makes sense in the context of the character. It allows for the cleanest wrap-up of Midoriya and Shigaraki's character. I don't like it, though. Because it just makes All For One the root of everything, and everything's his fault, and evil, blah, 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 blah. I don't like it. Never have. Never will. Dumb. But, shock horror. Even still, I'm not going to let the last 3 pages of a really good chapter dour my mood. Like I said, thematically, chapter's fantastic. I do like the themes it addresses here and the parallels it finally readjusts and retackles with Midoriya and Shigaraki. I love the visual storytelling in this chapter with young Midoriya and being encountered with and entrancing. I love the visual of Midoriya's arms being broken away. I love all that. I love Shigaraki, the mask, rejecting the idea that he can just be saved because he's some crying kid and that he genuinely believes he has a role in the world. I like all that. I just don't like All For One. So what would be, if we could legit just end it here, if we could end it here to the fingers disappearing and end on that cliffhanger and then be like, what's happening next? I would give this chapter a 10 out of 10 because I like the complexities of and how it tackles the multifaceted nature of Shigaraki Tomura as a character. But because of All For One showing up and rearing his ugly, no eyes, having face at the end, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Once again, it 2 points off is because I don't like what it does for Shigaraki and his character and essentially erases. And it does, essentially, it proves Midoriya right, though. It proves Midoriya right And it proves Shigaraki right. Because Shigaraki wasn't born that way. Who knows? Maybe Shigaraki was going to be quirkless, for all we know. Because decay was given to him by All For One. He was a setup from the start. As All For One says, he never made a single decision for himself. Because Shigaraki's not a character. He's a tool and a vessel for All For One. A infinitely less interesting character. But, regardless, if you somehow made it all the way to the end of this video with my angry yapping, please leave welcome back in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you know when I sell on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks will include the 15-minute live reaction to this very chapter, along with ad-free variations of all my videos. And if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That on the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: O'Connor Plays, Greyhound, Akids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Teen Midgao, Querencia Tala, and Red Wolf 4765. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Panda Goat, Midnight Lord 21, Marcus, Kevin, Igneal, and Ehak1. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $7 members: Autumn's Mornings Lazo and Sick Addiction. And I'd like to give a hefty thank you to our $10 member, Banana Phone. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $10 patrons, Joaquin, Jermaine, and Idemokami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, China Doll 09. And another gargantuan, juicy, scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.